What's up, everybody? AJ Simmons here, back with another great interview for you guys. And today's guest is a lot smarter than me. And if you don't believe me, you can ask the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. I introduce to you guys the OSHA Regional Compliance Specialist out of Philly, Miss Isabel DeOlaveira. Did I say your name correct?
You did, Isabel DeOlaveira, correct.
Perfect, perfect. How are you today?
I'm well. I was going to
Good.
say it's a privilege to be able to record this in November of 2020. Again, the information might be time sensitive, so we want to make sure we get that on the recording somewhere. But it's unusually warm, actually, for November in Pennsylvania.
Good, good.
I'll take it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, before we jump straight into it, can you just share a little bit about who you are, your background, and then what you do?
Sure. As AJ said, my name is Isabel DeOlaveira. I am the Regional Compliance Assistant Specialist and Coordinator for the Mid-Atlantic states. It's Region 3 by definition. That is Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia, Washington, D.C., those 6 jurisdictions. And my background is in engineering. I have an occupational safety and health engineering master's and was in the private sector doing building management and then environmental consulting before I came to the OSHA agency about 20 plus years ago. I started as a compliance, safety, and health officer inspector, but they are sometimes called COSHOs, CSHOs. And I did that for 13 years in New York, New Jersey. And then I had the opportunity to take a promotion here in the Philadelphia regional office. And I've been doing this for over 10 years.
Nice, nice. All right. Well, that engineering background makes sense because you come across as very, I guess, put together, like you're on top of it. And that's how engineers usually are. I'm a machinist by trade, so I work hand in hand with a lot of engineers a lot in my past. So, all right. Well, can you explain to us exactly what OSHA is?
Surely. OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And in 1970, Congress enacted the law that said OSHA's mission is to ensure safe and healthy workplaces. And how we do that is by setting and enforcing regulations, providing outreach and training, such as today, as well as compliance assistance or even technical assistance. So employers have a responsibility to provide that safe and healthy workplace, and the employees also have a part. They have to follow all the safety rules. So there
Gotcha.
you go.
All right. Well, speaking of, we have to follow the safety rules. As a brand new cleaning company, what can we do to be in compliance with OSHA?
That's a really good question. Employers need to provide that safe and healthy workplace, just like we said, but it's important to teach those good safety health habits, safe habits as well, than to have to unlearn bad habits. The comparison I can make is similar to seatbelts in cars. They've been there for a really long time, but did most of us use them before the state laws required them? So that's it. So employers can provide safety and health training. They have to provide the safety equipment, and they also have to provide time, allocate time in their schedule so that employees can do things safely, not be rushed, as well as this training has to be done on company time. And what I tell employers, especially new ones, if you can put safety right into your business plan, that way it's in your plan, and then when you're bidding jobs, you don't have to go, oh, I didn't leave, X percent of, the money for safety equipment. So it's already in the plan. You know upfront you're going to need X amount of dollars, for your safety program, and it's important. Safer companies are going to be profitable companies, and they're going to stay successful. Some of the programs that employers will typically have are the hazardous communication program, covering workers' rights, and I said the responsibilities too, so that during that first orientation and training, they'll cover the personal protective equipment that they, as a cleaning company, would need to wear. Also, don't forget the facility in which you're cleaning may have certain policies and procedures that you have to adhere to. So and I'm not saying this is the case, but if that host employer says all employees that come into this building need to wear safety shoes, you're like, all right, I got to make sure they have safety shoes. Put it in the bid, in the contract. So.
That's huge. That's huge right there. I didn't even consider that. That's a huge one. I appreciate that.
This is one where a lot of employers, especially with cleaning chemicals, they forget. If they're marked corrosive, if you have cleaning chemicals or other corrosive liquids, you're going to need an eye wash. An emergency eye wash is mandatory equipment. It's not just a good idea, it's going to be important. And then you have to decide again with that host employer where it's going to be. Typically, it's with the fill station or in that closet or, again, wherever that is.
I know that my next question is going to be a little bit more trivial, but again, these are the people that watch me. We're fresh off the street. We're just getting into entrepreneurship, and we don't know anything about a lot of this stuff. So that's why I definitely wanted to bring you on so you can educate us here. And so one question one might ask is, okay, well, she's from OSHA. Well, what is the difference between OSHA and the EPA and the CDC and all of these different acronyms? Because you got to help us out there.
Oh, positively, absolutely. Well, again, I'll say it 2 or 3 times, as many times as everybody needs it. OSHA stands for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It's for the regulatory agency for workplaces where there's an employee-employer relationship. So there we go. EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency. And typically, most people think about it when it's clean air or clean water, or, if there's it's called like an oil spill and it gets into the earth. So clean earth. But OSHA and EPA have what's called a mutual understanding that EPA, will provide lists of chemicals that are registered for different effectiveness for different infectious agents, be it viruses or bacteria. And I know we are in a national pandemic, so it's the time of COVID. So EPA actually has the responsibility under their pesticide registration, I know it's an odd section of their unit to put it in, to list the disinfectants that are good for coronavirus COVID-19. And we'll get into a little bit more of that. But CDC. Now, CDC is the Center for Disease Control. It's non-regulatory. It does not issue tickets or citations the way OSHA does. Again, when we set and enforce those regulations during OSHA inspections at facilities. But during the OSHA Act of 1970, Congress also said we have to have research and regulatory guidance and best practices somewhere. And that's where NIOSH came in. So NIOSH is the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And OSHA works with NIOSH because, again, occupational safety and health, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So we're somewhat related, but so as not to have them appear as if they're working always with us, we have them separate. So they're in separate departments. So NIOSH is in CDC, and you hear a lot about CDC guidelines, during COVID and, Ebola and then H1N1 and swine flu and avian flu. All of that is typically started at CDC NIOSH.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. I appreciate that breakdown. Now, I'm wondering, you told us what we can do to be in compliance, but what are the responsibility as an employee, as an employer, because when we hire our employees, I don't know if things change or not. So what will be our responsibilities as employers?
Well, OSHA's law has the employers having the responsibility to provide a safe and healthy workplace. And I'm going to review some of them right here, but truthfully, the employer always has the responsibility to make sure what are the recognized hazards of their type of work. Right now, again, during the national pandemic, it's an awareness that every workplace and every place outside of our homes even has the possibility of having the coronavirus in the air because it is airborne. So you have to recognize that hazard and then provide a safe and healthy workplace. So when you provide a workplace free from serious recognized hazards and you're complying with all standards, rules, and regulations under the OSHA Act, then you'll be compliant, which is what that you want. There's OSHA poster that'll review some of the information. It's free. It is also downloadable off the OSHA webpage. I'm going to send you a couple of links that when people watch this video, if they want to see which pages we're talking about, we can have them listed.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Now, I know that OSHA does inspections typically on a lot of the buildings that we typically clean. What can we be doing to help, I guess, the customer not get fined, as well as maybe them passing on the fine to us? Exactly. So what can we do to help avoid getting fined from an OSHA inspection?
It's a really good question. You can examine the workplace when you go estimate that job, and then again, when you see how hazardous it is, even just by walking from, this area that you be cleaning to the next area you're going to be cleaning, is that something that you have to walk this way? Is there another safer route for how to get to the places you need to clean? And making sure employees have the right and safe tools and equipment, and they're being maintained to do their job. Again, something as simple as a garbage can on wheels. Well, at some point, those wheels are going to wear out, and it's going to be hard to push that garbage can. So is it the cleaning company's responsibility or the host employer? Again, who owns the cart? Something as simple as that. There's a maintenance plan on the cart. But you can use posters, labels, signs. Again, the typical one that you see in cleaning is the yellow triangle about wet floor. Because again, it looks nice and shiny, but is that nice and shiny because it's wet, or is it nice and shiny because you put a nice wax on it and it's already dry? So that's what the signage is for. Establishing or even updating what's called operating procedures and communicating to the employees so that they follow the safety and health requirements. Now, when you communicate to the employees, you must provide the safety and health training in a language and a vocabulary workers can understand. There's nothing that says it has to be in English. It can be in other languages. We recognize the United States is a multilingual country. As a matter of fact, that OSHA poster is in about 10 or 15 languages. So again, saying I don't have the poster in a language that my employees understand may not be accurate. We have a lot of languages. Also, you provide that training in a different format. Again, sign language if employees are visually impaired. So you have to make the assessment as the employer to provide that training in a language and a manner that the employees understand. Working with hazardous chemicals, and really most workplaces have some hazardous chemicals. I used to give the example, okay, most facilities who do the cleaning, you're doing cleaning once a week in the bathrooms. But now, during COVID, we're all cleaning our workstations 4 to 6 times a day. Right. So guess what? Everybody should be updating their what's called HAZCOM, hazardous communication. They should be updating their HAZCOM training. There's safety data sheets that are required to be maintained. Again, they do have to be available in English, but if they could be available in other languages, typically in Spanish and French for Canada, US, Mexico, chemicals that are imported. So even if the chemical wasn't manufactured here, it has to be something that's, if it's imported into the United States, it has to be compliant with OSHA's safety data sheet requirement, which again is abbreviated SDS, safety data sheet. Gotcha. The newest regulation that some employers may not be aware of, maybe even some of your host facilities, we have a new 1904 record keeping requirement that if an employee unfortunately dies, even from a heart attack or motor vehicle is a little gray, but I always say report it just in case. If an employee dies while under your employment working, it needs to be a notification to the OSHA office, 1-800-321-OSHA, 1-800-321-6742. There we go. And all work-related inpatient hospitalizations, all amputations, even soft tissue fingertip, is considered an amputation, and all losses of an eye need to be reported to the OSHA agency within 24 hours in federal jurisdiction. Now, some of your clients and or associates might be working in states that have what's called state plan states. Again, Virginia and Maryland in our jurisdiction are state plan states. Florida happens to be federal. Texas is federal, but places like Indiana, for example, is a state plan state. So I always encourage employers and employees to have that 1-800-321-6742 in their cell phone, because we all have our cell phones now. And then if you're in a state that isn't federal jurisdiction, they'll get you to the correct phone number. And then that 24-hour inpatient hospitalization, amputation, loss of an eye is all jurisdiction, because the states have as protective regulations. And same thing with the 8 hours of workplace fatality. All the states have it. All 50 do.
Gotcha. So in that case, I'll go for it.
And again, employees cannot be discriminated against if they exercise their rights under the OSHA regulation. It's called whistleblower protection. So an employee has a right to complain to OSHA, to bring up safety and health concerns, and have them addressed. So we've had a lot of whistleblower cases during COVID, and employees shouldn't be harassed and discriminated against for that. Bring up safety and health issues.
Absolutely. So basically, anytime you see any type of safety issue or something that's like close to that could cause a hazard or something like that, just stay on top of it as an employer, because you might be at risk of. Gotcha. All right. Fair enough.
And we are here to help. We have compliance assistance, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit. So I'll save that for a little later.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I know you brought up the times that we're in right now. And so with these times that we're in fighting COVID and everything, a lot of us cleaning companies are getting into the disinfecting services. And so some people are using the ULV foggers, some are using the electrostatic sprayers, and then we got other people using the UV lights. My question to you is, do you know if OSHA has any type of preference in regards to which method to use for disinfecting?
That's an excellent question. And the answer is we do not have any preference. What I will say is that we need to start with a basic understanding of what the differences of cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting are. Because the only thing OSHA is requiring at this point is that you use an EPA registered disinfectant for COVID. It's called List N, and as in Nancy, for cleaning surfaces if your recognized hazard is COVID. Again, you may have other facilities that have other recognized hazards like tuberculosis and, as I said, Ebola, and so on and so forth. So you need to understand that each of those has a different disinfectant. And they have a different list for each of those. So what we'll review just so we have an understanding of what cleaning is. And again, it means something different in those contracts. So cleaning is removing dirt and dust and germs from surfaces. To clean is likely to use soap or other detergent and soap and water to physically clean off a surface and an object. And I highly recommend, even before disinfecting or sanitizing, to clean. So there's always going to be hand washing, washing of surfaces, and the hand washing, which we can, also cover. To disinfect is to kill germs on surfaces and objects. So some common disinfectants are bleach or alcohol. Even homemade ones, they have a shelf life, which means they're only shelf stable for maybe 24 hours. So you need to label that bottle if it's homemade, because you need to have labeled containers so you know what your chemicals are. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to put the date and time as well, if it's a homemade bleach solution. If you're going to make a solution that's a percentage or a dilution, you need to know what the manufacturer or the distributor of that chemical recommends. You got to follow the instructions. It's very, very important. So sanitizing could be done by either cleaning, disinfecting, or both. Sanitizing means that you're lowering the number of germs to a certain safe level as per whatever the regulatory body is. Typically, it would be like a healthcare grade, or in this case, probably EPA to get it down to a certain level. But also food in restaurants. You're sanitizing surfaces for restaurant grade. So it does mean something different. For example, people use dishwasher high temperature to sanitize the dishes. Antibacterial wipes is really a last resort. Again, you have to be mindful if like you have antibacterial, because it's bacteria, not the virus, which is what coronavirus is. So again, just a distinction of we know, OSHA knows that EPA has two letters of interpretation, which again, I'll be more than happy to share with you so you can list them, about why aren't ozone generators, UV lights, or air purifiers on list N. It's because that chemical needs to have been tested under that setting. And the only thing list N is, N as in Nancy, registered disinfectants, is for surface cleaning. So you can't compare these products if you're putting it in a sprayer or a fogger or a so it's not to say that they aren't adequate, but you need to know what those manufacturers' tests were and if it adheres to what your host employer is looking for.
Yeah. And so the only way we would really be able to find that out is if we go through the manufacturer of that chemical. You guys wouldn't know, right?
As well as EPA's page, because
the EPA would have. So if we wanted to know, because I know certain chemicals, like you just said, well, they might work, cleaning the surface like with a cloth or something, but with the actual like sprayer or fogger, sprayer or fogger, it might not be effective. So the EPA does have a list for actual chemicals that actually will work in a sprayer or fogger as well.
Yeah, unless the pesticide product label specifically includes disinfecting instructions that include saying fogging, fumigation, wide area, or electrostatic spraying, EPA does not recommend using those products because it hasn't evaluated that product's safety using that method if it's not addressed on the label. So
I see. Gotcha. All right. Now, when it comes to the disinfecting services also, is there any mandatory PPE that's required that you know of to be worn during the process?
Yes.
I didn't expect that. Okay. We all is.
Yeah. The safety data sheet would probably specify it. So it's like when using, and again, it all depends on which form. If I'm using alcohol pouring it versus alcohol coming out of a trigger sprayer versus I've now diluted, alcohol might not be a good reason, bleach. If I put bleach in it, is it 100% bleach? Is it 5% bleach? So the safety data sheet would be specific to that dilution. Also, there's usually a technical information sheet, and the employer has the responsibility to do their own hazard assessment, because it might say something like use gloves. Well, what kind of gloves? There's nitrile, latex, butyl. Each one of those chemicals is protective for different categories of chemical. I couldn't possibly tell you each of the chemicals because I don't know all of the different chemicals you, as the employer, are providing to your employees to use. So I will say there's also the host facilities policy, because they might have, very specific, when being in this room, because of, again, electrostatic things, they don't want, electrostatic in the painting area. For example, you probably wouldn't be cleaning the painting area anyway, but it's very specific to the location, and it is the employer that has to do it. So you could use the information you find in safety data sheets, manufacturer recommendations, technical information sheets, as well as the host facility.
Gotcha. Now I'm wondering, because I'm seeing a lot of different people pop up out of everywhere with these, sprayers and these, just trying to throw any chemical inside a machine and just start a disinfecting company. And again, I'm definitely all for people, chasing their dream of entrepreneurship and starting their company. But at the same time, I'm a little bit, concerned about people just doing anything and using any machine. I don't even know if it's been tested yet. So is there anything that you might recommend from an OSHA standpoint that they might need to consider before they just jump into that line of business?
Yeah, they certainly could use OSHA's consultation service. And OSHA's consultation service is available in each of the 50 states. It's sometimes run out of their local state department or the state university, but it's state specific. There's an OSHA.gov consultation page. That's a great starting point. And because it is free, it is very popular in most states. And I would recommend signing up for it soon or sooner than you actually want them to come out, so that this way you can prepare ahead of time. Sometimes there is what's called a backlog. You have to wait in line. The requirement is that anything they find, you need to fix. So that's the agreement. It's free, but you still have to provide a safe and healthy workplace once they're done. There's no relationship. They're not in the same office as the OSHA inspector offices. So there's a barrier of communication. It's completely separate. And because you're agreeing to fix what they find, you can limit it to, okay, help me do my hazardous communication program, or help me with, providing it in a language that the workers understand, or help me do that hazard assessment for personal protective equipment for this category of chemicals. They typically start small. They provide these services to small companies, less than 50 or 100 employees, but because they know those are the types of facilities and companies that don't have safety personnel on staff. Sometimes, sometimes the employer does have that as a staff member, but safety is everybody's responsibility. It's not mine alone at the company. It's not yours alone at the company. We all have to work safely.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you said that the consulting service was separate from the inspection side, because like the first thing that ran through my mind was like, it kind of almost sounds like we're volunteering and say, hey, make sure you come check me if the agreement. I mean, not that we shouldn't want to follow the agreement anyway and just fix what the consultant tells us is wrong, but it's just like the first thing that honestly as an entrepreneur that came through my mind was, oh wow, so you're volunteering and you're saying, hey, make sure you come check on me after you tell me what's wrong, right? So I'm glad you put that distinction out there.
Yeah, and you have to ask for it, because some people are like, oh, why doesn't that come out to my, company? I said, well, because you have to ask for it, because when you're asking for it, you're agreeing to fix it, right. So think of it as your vehicle checkup, your once a year, consultation and review. I won't call it an inspection because it's not. It's a consultation visit. There's some YouTube videos out of state specific plans that give you like a 3-minute commercial on what their program is like. Also, if employers can't wait, and I understand, if there's a backlog in your state, you may have to wait 3 to 6 months, and that would be bad if you wanted to be compliant right now. I recommend the quick start. So you go to the OSHA.gov in the upper corner, there's a search box, put in the word quick start. QUICK, I think space, START. And you'll have a choice between like healthcare, general industry, or construction. You choose general industry, and it'll take you to like a 7-step process of like, most employers have these kinds of hazards. Click on that, see if you have these programs. Start with step 1. Step 1 will typically take you enough time that then consultation service will be calling to help you.
Gotcha.
It isn't overwhelming, because if your employer is small, then it doesn't have as many safety and health hazards as a facility that has 1,000 employees and has 20 buildings. So it is a little different. Also, you can rely on your host employer. Your host employer may have already had safety and health programs for their cleaning staff, and they'd be willing to share it with you.
Absolutely.
So that's a possibility. You don't know. And then making sure your worker rights are covered. Again, the worker rights of providing a safe and healthy workplace, as well as whistleblower protections and non-discrimination.
Right. Now, I know when I was putting these questions together, I purposely kept them at a surface level. I didn't want to go too deep, because I know when we spoke on the phone before this, you would kind of get, guided me on what I could ask. And I was like, you know what? Actually, I'm not even gonna go that deep. I'm gonna let the people ask, seek afterwards if they decide they need more information, and maybe we'll even do a part 2 if needed. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
with
and
that said,
I'd be more than willing to come back.
absolute thank you. And so with that said, I gotta ask, so where can they go to find more information about this? And then also, if they were able to reach out to you, how could they reach you as well?
Alrighty. The best place to reach the most current information is the OSHA.gov page. That makes the most sense to start with. We actually have an OSHA newsletter. As soon as you go to the OSHA.gov page, it's going to pop up and say, hey, do you want to sign up for the newsletter? Again, by signing up for the newsletter, your email does not go to the local OSHA office and going, oh, they're coming for OSHA information. That means they must not be compliant. That's not the case. We
Right.
want to get the OSHA word out. We have a Twitter handle and we'll share information there about what's new and current, but by signing up for the newsletter, you get it as well. Also, there's a tab number 3, across the top, it's topics. You can go to the first one, it says employer, and there's a lot of questions and answers there. If, again, the employers and representatives from different stakeholders want to go get different guidance. And then there's also an topic specific things like asbestos and silica. Again, not for your industry specifically, but that sort of thing. There's a very large, getting larger all the time, coronavirus page. So you can go to that if there's a coronavirus specific information. As well as that at the top, I would recommend that quick start under general industry. Or if you select the topic of compliance assistance and you click on the state of Pennsylvania, you'll get my information. And my name again is Isabel DeOlaveira, DeOliveira. And I can be reached at 215-861-4900. That's the regional office, Philadelphia telephone number. I give out the general number because I do have site visits and work that takes me out of interfacing with the computer and stuff. Email will work as well, but if you call and left a voicemail, I may or may not get it to you. There's always a duty officer, and that person would be able to answer your question probably a lot faster than I would. So I give out the general information number, which again, 215-861-4900.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ms. Isabel, for taking the time out and doing this for us. I've learned a lot. I hope the audience has learned a lot as well. I'm sure they have. And I appreciate you. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you so much. Until next time, be safe, be well.
Absolutely. Thank you. You too.